Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in Gujarat. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is accompanying Israeli Prime Minister during his visit to the state. Prime Minister Netanyahu is expected to participate in a roadshow with Prime Minister Modi in Ahmedabad. These are live visuals of the Israeli Prime Minister arriving in Gujarat. The Israeli Prime Minister is about to disembark from his aircraft any moment now. During his Gujarat visit, the Israeli Prime Minister is likely to visit the Sabarmati Ashram. Later, the two leaders will also attend the inauguration ceremony of a startup exhibition. Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu will visit the Center of Excellence in Gujarat. The two leaders have developed a special connect after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel in July last year, a first ever by an Indian Prime Minister. On Tuesday, Mr. Netanyahu addressed the Raisina dialogue, stressing that military, economic and political power is the key to great power status. Netanyahu pointed out that terrorism is a common threat which both India and Israel face and emphasized on the need to strengthen ties. On Tuesday, the Israeli Prime Minister also visited the Taj Mahal with wife Sarah. The two posed for pictures at the iconic symbol of love. The two were welcomed in Agra by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. These are live visuals of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu having landed in Gujarat. He is visiting the home state of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who will also be accompanying him on this visit. Joining me on the broadcast is WION's political editor, Kartikeya Sharma. Good morning, Kartikeya. What do you make of this visit by Benjamin Netanyahu to Gujarat?
I think these are these visuals just tell us how closely Prime Minister himself has monitored all the functions, in the sense that it's a reflection of a personal bond also, and it's a reflection of the way Prime Minister has ensure that this trip remains both professional and intimate at the same time. So I think it's a reflection of the personal bond which Prime Minister shares with Netanyahu, and that is why arrangements have been made like that. And no one stays in a country. He's going to be here for he's been here for a couple of days, and if you look at the overall trip, he's going to be here for 4 to 5 days. But for someone to stay for 4 to 5 days and to be part of an Indian experience, Prime Minister is ensuring it remains an unforgettable Indian experience.
Absolutely. And Kartikeya, we have been seeing all these dignitaries, be it Xi Jinping or Shinzo Abe, and now Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, whenever such dignitaries have been visiting India of late, the Prime Minister has been making sure that they do visit Gujarat. the Prime Minister clearly is very keen to showcase his home state to all these visiting dignitaries.
Absolutely. He not only takes them to Gujarat, he reminds them of his cultural root. And Gujarat is a place where he can ensure that certain investments can take place. So this is the reason why Prime Minister takes them to Ahmedabad, Sabarmati, because he understands that if certain investments, certain things have to happen, Gujarat is one state which he can do very, very easily. But I wouldn't say that, it's because it's about a state. I would say it's about the bond he shares with Gujarat. I remember a Prime Minister at a dinner saying this to a journalist. I was there, that people who come from outside Delhi is very stubborn to accept them. So what I could take back from that sentence was that he's not a typical Delhi politician. He came from a state called Gujarat, and he wants to acknowledge it that he has come from Gujarat, and he acknowledges it by taking them there, that's where his roots are. So I think that's a very nice gesture of reinstating where you started from.
Indeed, Kartikeya. And can we expect Israeli companies and firms to now start looking at Gujarat as an investment destination post this visit?
I think Israeli firms, Israeli companies will be there. That is why it's a big delegation. But he's going to have a big meeting in Mumbai tomorrow. The big meeting will be with the honchos, and I think that's where the big I would say understanding would emerge in terms of private investment, private media.
Absolutely. And what else can we expect during the day today when Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are in Gujarat, are in Ahmedabad the whole day today, Kartikeya?
Well, I would say that today is a photo update. Today it's a day of reinstating the personal bond. Today is not the day of, I would say, business. But today is the day when the Prime Minister takes time out and takes him around in the state of Gujarat.
Right. We'll leave it at that for the moment. Kartikeya Sharma, thank you so much for joining us with those perspectives. These are live visuals. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has landed in Gujarat and is about to disembark from his aircraft. He is visiting Ahmedabad, where he will be accompanied by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Of late, we have been witnessing almost a pattern of sorts where all major visiting dignitaries are being hosted in Gujarat. Earlier, we saw Chinese President Xi Jinping visiting Gujarat, followed by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And now we have the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visiting Gujarat today, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be showcasing his home state before him. Here we see Prime Minister Narendra Modi having reached the venue to receive Benjamin Netanyahu. Prime Minister Modi has been breaking the protocol often to receive such dignitaries whenever they have been arriving in India. These are visuals of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu along with his wife Sarah. They are about to disembark from their aircraft. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now approaching the tarmac, where he will be receiving Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu's visit to Gujarat is significant given the fact that this is Prime Minister Modi's home state, and the Prime Minister will be wanting to showcase his home state before the visiting dignitary. Also, the kind of chemistry we have been witnessing between PM Modi and PM Netanyahu, such a visit is only expected to strengthen this bond between the two leaders. There we have Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu along with his wife now disembarking from their aircraft. And there we have it, Prime Minister Narendra Modi now receiving Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Gujarat. Prime Minister Modi is expected to take Benjamin Netanyahu to many places in Gujarat today, including the Sabarmati Ashram. These are live visuals we are getting from Ahmedabad in Gujarat, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has now landed on his Gujarat visit. Several key world leaders have visited Gujarat during their recent India visits, and this is in continuation of that. We have already seen Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe having visited Gujarat during their India tours, and now Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with whom Prime Minister Narendra Modi shares a very special bond, is now in Gujarat to see Prime Minister Modi's home state. These are live visuals from Ahmedabad in Gujarat, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just landed and has been received by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Indian Prime Minister is now escorting the guests out of the airport area. In the backdrop, we can hear sounds of music. Local folk music is being played, and a cultural program is already on at the venue. The chemistry Prime Minister Narendra Modi shares with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is unmistakable. Both leaders share a very close bond. It was visible when PM Modi visited Israel in July last year. And despite some minor hiccups in between, the India-Israel relationship continues to grow stronger with each passing day. Here we see Prime Minister Modi explaining to the visiting dignitary what all is happening around that place. Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Gujarat is likely to be a high point of his 6-day tour to India. He is likely to be visiting a lot of places in Gujarat today, accompanied by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Prime Minister Modi, of course, will take great pride in showcasing his home state and the work he did there during his terms as Chief Minister of that state. It will also be an opportunity for the Prime Minister to showcase Gujarat as a potential investment destination for Israeli firms. There we see a cultural program going on at the venue where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just landed. For our viewers who might have just switched on their television sets, these are live visuals we are getting from Ahmedabad in Gujarat, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just arrived on his Gujarat visit. He has been received by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is now escorting the visiting dignitary out of the airport area. Both leaders are now expected to begin an 8-kilometer-long roadshow from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram, which is also known as the Gandhi Ashram. This is the same ashram where Mahatma Gandhi lived for more than a decade. We had witnessed a similar roadshow when Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had visited Gujarat a few months back. Joining me on the broadcast is my colleague Archana Solanki. Good morning, Archana. Interesting visuals coming from Ahmedabad. Prime Minister Modi has just received Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We believe a roadshow is now going to happen from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram.
Yes, Raghu, the interesting visuals are coming in from Ahmedabad. And remember, this is not the first time a similar kind of reception was accorded to Xi Jinping and Shinzo Abe when they arrived in Gujarat the last time. And as you spoke about this roadshow, let me give you details about that elaborate roadshow that's been planned for Benjamin Netanyahu. Around 50 stages have been set up for Prime Minister Modi and his Israeli counterpart for this roadshow. People from different states and union territories will perform. It will be a cultural extravaganza. Indian culture will be on full display, and the colors and festivities of Indian culture. And this will be setting the stage to welcome the Israeli Prime Minister to Gujarat, and then these dignitaries will be heading to Sabarmati Ashram to pay their respects to Mahatma Gandhi. Remember, this is also a part of, like I was giving you details about the road show. They will embark on a road show to Sabarmati Ashram, where after that, members of Gujarat's Jewish community are waiting to greet the two leaders at the ashram. Around 50 stages, as I earlier told you, have been erected along the stretch, and people from different states will welcome the Israeli Prime Minister. And from the Sabarmati Ashram, Modi and Netanyahu will go to iCreate, which is a startup, which is an autonomous center for building entrepreneurs. And it's near the Bavla town. And this is how the two leaders plan on their day. And after which, that very famous Gal Mobile water desalinization jeep, which grabbed the headlines when Modi last visited Israel, and now it's been returned to, it's been gifted by Benjamin Netanyahu to Prime Minister Modi as a gift. And this would be, remember, Modi's second such roadshow in Gujarat. And the last time we saw similar visuals play out was when Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited Gujarat in September last year. So this is Gujarat's red carpet for Israeli Prime Minister.
Indeed, Archana, and also the fact that Prime Minister Modi has been making sure that all of these foreign dignitaries, heads of states who are visiting India, he makes it a point to showcase Gujarat before them. He makes it a point that they visit Gujarat. What are the tangibles we can expect from Netanyahu's visit to Gujarat? Is it all, or is it more about optics, or can we expect tangibles in terms of more investments from Israeli firms into Gujarat?
The first leg of, as you mentioned, tangibles has already taken place because 9 agreements were signed between India and Israel day before yesterday, and today is essentially a symbolic visit. Today is essentially a roadshow which will be on display. It will be, in a way, symbolic of the ties that exist between India and Israel. It will be a show of strength kind of sorts between India and Israel. So today, yes, there will be that meeting with the iCreate startup people with Israeli Prime Minister and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and we'll have to wait and watch as to what comes out after that meeting. But another thing that I want to tell you, Raghavendra, is that especially like you said, that Prime Minister Modi takes care of the arrangements and he ensures that the dignitaries visiting Gujarat get a good color, get a good, they get to see our culture, because the last time, and nobody can forget that swing diplomacy that took place when Xi Jinping visited India. And of course, that picture became viral and everybody spoke about it when both Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping sat on that swing, and people thought that that was a new chapter in Indo-Chinese ties. And likewise, when Shinzo Abe visited with his wife, and he was in Gujarat the last time. So today is essentially a day when 8 kilometers of road show will also reflect upon the ever getting stronger ties between the two countries, the ties which have been strengthening over the years, and now on full display. And the 6-day visit of Israeli Prime Minister has further sealed a stamp on that strong bond between the two countries.
Also joining me on the broadcast is senior journalist Neerja Chaudhary. Good morning, Ms. Chaudhary. Prime Minister Netanyahu has landed in Gujarat. He is now being escorted by Prime Minister Modi. The roadshow from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram has just begun. How do you see this visit, this Netanyahu visit to Gujarat? Prime Minister Modi has obviously been wanting to showcase his home state before all these visiting dignitaries. But what is the political significance of such a visit, and does it mean anything in terms of tangibles, in terms of getting or attracting investments to the state of Gujarat?
I think to answer your question, all three of them. Number one, yes, the Prime Minister has been taking all the world leaders who visited India to Gujarat to showcase his home state, and he's doing this with the Israeli Prime Minister also. It will be high in optics. Mr. Netanyahu is as good a communicator as Mr. Narendra Modi, as we've seen in the last days, as also when Mr. Modi went to Israel on that visit. So, yes, I think this road show, though the security concerns would be there, and, undergirding the whole road show much more than in the case of possibly other leaders. Number two, very interesting thing to watch would be the MOUs that have been signed, the fine print in those MOUs, because the world and India has a lot to learn from Israel, that small country which is only 9 miles, at certain areas width-wise, but has made huge progress in terms of agriculture, drip irrigation, use of technology for health services, and of course dealing with security and terrorism. So I think that fine print of what we are partnering with them may open a new chapter, because yes, many countries have a lot to learn from Israel. Now, will it bring things to more investment to Gujarat? That probably is the idea of the visit of the Israeli Prime Minister to Gujarat.
Indeed, Ms. Chaudhary, and also the fact that Prime Minister Modi has been wanting to showcase Gujarat. He's also trying to show the kind of work he did as a chief minister there. And what do you make of the personal rapport he has, he has developed with Netanyahu? Both leaders appear to share a very close bond.
Yes, that is true, and that was evident when Mr. Narendra Modi went to Israel. Even that walk on the beach where the Israeli Prime Minister told Mr. Modi, we can take off our shoes and walk. I mean, those are milestone pictures that stay in people's minds. Yes, that shows a personal rapport. Even when Mr. Netanyahu alighted from the plane, when he arrived in India, he came down the steps, with his arms wide open. So yes, all these things do matter. Personal rapport between top leaders does make a difference. But as I say, it is a fine print of the deals that have been signed that is going to make a lot of difference in the future.
Also, Ms. Chaudhary, there have been hiccups in this relationship when it comes to Palestine. We recently, we recently saw one such hiccup at the United Nations, where India voted against the U.S. and its move to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Now, a few weeks after that, such a visit is happening. Do you think both India and Israel will be able to move on from such hiccups?
I think so. You know, the Israeli Prime Minister has shown in the way he's answered questions also, whether it's on surgical strikes, which Israel has also been resorting to, though not talking about it publicly. And when asked about it, Mr. Netanyahu, did not want to comment or about Hafiz Saeed, even though Israel talks openly against Pakistan, but they didn't want to ruffle feathers of China, which is backing Pakistan. So, he's not moved out of step, nor has he given up on the long-term relationship that they see with India. As he says, another democracy, another market, partnership in security and defense, and a host of other issues. So I don't think those yes, India has a certain stand, and that is wise also, the position that India took in the vote. And earlier it had abstained. So we need to see in the future, in the votes what stand India takes. But India does have a relationship with the Islamic countries, so it has to be mindful of all that also and take an independent position, yet furthering its relationship with Israel.
Absolutely. And also, Ms. Chaudhary, historically, India has always sided with Palestine and the cause of Palestine, and has almost maintained an arm's length from Israel for so many years. But of late, the kind of proximity which seems to be growing between India and Israel, where does this leave India? Where do you see India in such a situation? Will it be able to maintain a healthy equation with both Israel and Palestine?
Well, I hope so. I hope so very much. Of course, our diplomatic ties go back 25 years, and you remember Israeli Prime Minister had come to India for the first time in 2003 when Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was Prime Minister. Of course, Mr. Modi was the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel. So there has been a strengthening of ties between the two countries over the years. And yet, as I say, India has had a relationship with Palestine and with the Islamic world. Therefore, it will have to navigate its own course, with both sides. Whether it can, I hope it can do that. Skillfully, I'm sure it will be able to do that.
We'll leave it at that for the moment. Thank you, Neerja Chaudhary, for joining us on the broadcast. These are visuals of the road show which has just begun from the airport where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu landed a while back. This is an 8-kilometer long road show from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram. Sabarmati Ashram, which is also known as the Gandhi Ashram, is the place where Mahatma Gandhi lived for more than a decade. Around 50 stages have been set up along the route both leaders will take from the airport to reach the Sabarmati Ashram. These are live visuals we are getting from Ahmedabad in Gujarat, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just landed to commence his Gujarat visit. He was received by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the airport. And Prime Minister Modi is now accompanying Prime Minister Netanyahu on this road show from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram. During the 8-kilometer long road show, around 50 stages have been set up for PM Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu. People from different states and union territories will perform and welcome the two leaders at various points as they pass by. There we see a crowd of people who have gathered on the route both leaders are taking from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram. We saw similar visuals a few months back when Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited Gujarat to launch the bullet train project. He was also taken in a similar road show. There we see the security detail along with the vehicle carrying both the Prime Ministers. Maintaining security during such road shows is of utmost concern for the security agencies. And we see a lot of crowds which have gathered on both sides of this road. Joining me on the broadcast is former diplomat Vivek Karju. Good morning, Mr. Karju. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Gujarat today. Prime Minister Modi wanting to showcase his home state before the visiting dignitary. What do you make of this Gujarat visit by PM Netanyahu, sir?
I think it is clearly designed to impart a personal touch by the Prime Minister in welcoming the Israeli Prime Minister to India. And he is doing for Prime Minister Netanyahu what he's earlier done for Prime Minister Abe, with whom also quite clearly he has a very good relationship. So this illustrates the close ties that there are between, and the close friendship that there is between the Prime Minister and the Israeli Prime Minister, and this also is an attempt to create a bond, an enduring bond between the two countries. These are very special gestures that are done to show that the relationship is to be taken, the bilateral relationship is to be taken on an upward trajectory.
Indeed, sir, and we've been witnessing the kind of bonhomie both leaders share, the kind of camaraderie they share. The equation they have, it looks very good and it looks very, very personal. What do you make of this bond which Prime Minister Modi has developed with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
No, I think, in my view, these are important bonds, but at the end of the day, the strength of a bilateral relationship between two countries has to rest on objective factors.
Right.
Where there is a coincidence of interests in various fields, political, economic, especially political and economic. Of course, cultural factors play a part. But just as in a symphony, the symphony conductor plays a very important role in ensuring that there is harmonious music coming out, and he controls the tempo of the music. Similarly, leaders can control the tempo of a relationship.
Absolutely.
And through such personal touches, it is clearly showing that both the Prime Ministers want to up the tempo of the India-Israel relationship.
Requesting you to hold that thought, sir. Joining me on the broadcast is Vijay Sanghvi. He's a senior journalist. Good morning, Mr. Sanghvi. An important visit happening, and Prime Minister Modi has taken Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to his home state, Gujarat. Now, what do you make of this visit? Is it more about optics, or can we expect some tangibles in terms of Israeli firms actually viewing Gujarat as a potential investment destination? Mr. Sanghvi, can you hear me? We seem to have lost that audio line with Mr. Sanghvi. We'll just try and reconnect with him. But these are live images. We are beaming from Ahmedabad, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is being taken in a road show from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram. He is being accompanied by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who received him at the airport just a while back. On both sides of the roads, we can see large crowds which have gathered. Going back to Mr. Vivek Karju, who continues to be on the phone line with us. We seem to be having an audio issue with Mr. Karju. We'll try and reconnect with him in a bit. But these are live images from Gujarat, Ahmedabad, where a roadshow is currently on. From the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now accompanying Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the Sabarmati Ashram. The road is dotted with hordes of people on both sides who have gathered to catch a glimpse of both the leaders. Around 50 tableaus have been put up on the roadside along the route to accommodate people from different states of the country who will welcome the leaders as they pass by. One of the tableaus shows tribal dancers from Junagadh in Gujarat. These are live visuals from Ahmedabad, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just landed for his Gujarat visit. Accompanying him is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. There we see one of the cultural programs which is taking place along the route. Around 50 stages have been set up along the route. The two leaders are taking from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram. The Sabarmati Ashram, also known as the Gandhi Ashram, is the place where Mahatma Gandhi lived for more than a decade. A visit to the Sabarmati Ashram is a must for any visiting dignitary. There we see the convoy, which is now taking Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the Sabarmati Ashram. Scores of people have gathered on both sides of this route to catch a glimpse of both these leaders. We also see media contingents deployed all along the route. Once their engagements in Ahmedabad get over, both leaders are expected to go to Sabarkantha district, which is 100 kilometers away from Ahmedabad. There we see a huge crowd that has gathered on both sides of the road leading up to the Sabarmati Ashram. Going back to my colleague Archana Solanki, who is joining us over the phone line. Archana, the road show is on. We are also seeing these cultural programs which are happening all along the route. What can we expect during the entire day today? After Sabarmati Ashram, what all is on the agenda today?
Good morning, Raghavendra. So as you mentioned about this road show, let me put things into perspective for our viewers. Today is essentially a day when Prime Minister Modi and his Israeli counterpart will dedicate to innovators, entrepreneurs and farmers of Gujarat. So what we see on our screens is a part of that elaborate 8-kilometer long show which is taking place in Ahmedabad. And today, Netanyahu will, according to Prime Minister Modi, will experience Gujarat's remarkable hospitality during his visit to the state today. And a lot of programs and interactions have been arranged with wide range of people. They include innovators, entrepreneurs and farmers. After this, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Israeli counterpart will dedicate the plant of where that's Gal Mobile desalinization jeep, which has been gifted to Prime Minister Modi, and now another plant will be dedicated to the people of Suigam Taluka in Banaskanta district over video conference. Remember, during his visit to Israel in July last year, the two leaders rode that that jeep on Israel's Olga beach, and the significance of this jeep is that it can purify up to 20,000 liters of seawater per day. So that is a very, very significant move that's going to help both countries in a way, because remember, Israel is known for transforming its agriculture and it's known for its technology and innovation. And one thing that India can take from Israel at this point is a leaf from its technology. And one such example is this Galmobile Jeep, which grabbed the international headlines the last time when Modi visited Israel. So that beach will be gifted to Indian Prime Minister, and that Galmobile, that desalinization jeep can purify up to 20,000 liters of seawater. After that, the visit, it's believed that this visit will forever change the lives of a lot of people, because this particular village where this plant is going to be dedicated, is located on a small hill. It's about 6 miles away from the Run of Kutch, and this area particularly needs this kind of desalinization and purification jeep because of the water crisis that this area has been witnessing for a long time now. After that, these two leaders will then proceed for Sabarkantha-based Center of Excellence for Agriculture, which has been established by Israel. And then the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and his Israeli counterpart, will inaugurate a research facility for cultivation in Kutch. So, as I said, that this day, this Ahmedabad leg of Netanyahu's visit is dedicated to farmers and innovators. And also, one more important thing is that both the leaders will also meet members of a startup company. So, it's not just, as many are saying, it's high on symbolism. It's not just symbolism, but a lot of substance also is there in this visit, because it's agriculture, it's innovation, and of course, this show of strength on the roads of Ahmedabad.
Indeed, Archana, and obviously Prime Minister Modi wanting to showcase the kind of development he undertook while being the Chief Minister of that state for 3 terms, also showcasing his home state before the visiting Israeli Prime Minister, hoping to get Israeli firms and companies to bring in investment to Gujarat.
To give some more details about this particular roadshow that's taking place in Ahmedabad right now. So for the viewers who are watching us from Ahmedabad, or for those who are, it's important to tell them that the traffic along this route will be blocked till noon because of this VIP movement that's taking place. So it's only imperative for them to note that traffic will be blocked around this route till noon, and the Gujarat police has barricaded the entire stretch. It's like a fortress. The barricading, the security arrangements have been really tough. This obviously with the VIP movement that's taking place. 12 teams of the elite Chetak commandos, quick response teams, the bomb detection and disposal squad, and the police is guarding the venue. And the special squads are deployed on high-rise buildings also along the route. And we saw a similar arrangement that was made when Shinzo Abe was also a part of the roadshow that took place during his visit. So, what we see on our screens is also the cultural show which is on display. So 15 tableaus have been put up on the roadside, and we've been showing this to our viewers, the culture, the colors of Gujarat, and people from different states of the country who are welcoming Netanyahu. And one of the remarkable and the highlights of it is also the tribal dancers from Junagadh. And in his itinerary, according to his itinerary, Netanyahu will be spending 7 hours in Gujarat, and tomorrow he heads to Mumbai, where he'll be meeting the top names of Bollywood, and also he will inaugurate the Chabad House, which was one of the targets of 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks.
Indeed, Archana, and as was being earlier speculated that both leaders could travel in an open-top vehicle on this roadshow. Clearly, that has not happened. I'm sure there must be huge security concerns, and the Israeli security establishment must be really concerned about security issues. Probably that's why this open-top roadshow is not happening. They are traveling in a vehicle, but it is not an open-top vehicle, as we saw with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
Right, Raghavendra, we are yet to know why such an arrangement is not in place this time. And as you said that these two leaders are in their vehicle and they have not, it's not an open road show, unlike what happened in Shinzo Abe's case. And like I've been detailing how the security is, it's really strong. Agencies are not leaving anything to chance. 12 teams of elite Chetak commandos, quick response teams, the bomb detection and disposal squad, and the police is guarding the venue. The traffic, the entire stretch has been barricaded. It's blocked for the movement. It's blocked for the common man. It's only for the dignitaries and the VIPs who are in that road show. And especially special squads have been deployed on high-rise buildings. So security agencies are keeping a very close vigil on the movement that's taking place in and around the stretch where this roadshow is taking place.
Indeed, and clearly a lot of security arrangements that have been made on this route from the airport to the Sabarmati Ashram. We are given to understand that this journey is almost halfway through and both dignitaries will be reaching the Sabarmati Ashram in just a bit. Hordes of people have gathered on this route, but as my colleague Archana Solanki was just detailing, a heavy security presence, heavy security arrangements to ensure foolproof security for the visiting dignitary. There we see the cultural programs which have been happening all along the route. Lots of crowds gathered on both sides of the road on this particular route. A lot of traffic restrictions have been imposed, which are likely to stay till half of the day today, which may lead to some inconvenience to local population. These are live visuals from Ahmedabad, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now proceeding towards the Sabarmati Ashram, accompanied by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Archana, the relationship Prime Minister Modi has been sharing with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, it's there for all to see. Such a visit, that to his home state, is only going to strengthen the bond between both the leaders.
True, Raghavendra, and especially when you talk of India and Israel, the world knows how close both countries are. Essentially, the strategic and diplomatic ties between the two countries have witnessed stronger ties, and they've been great, if I may say so. But if you talk about the two leaders, the chemistry is something that everyone has been talking about. It's been written about, it's been spoken about, the personal chemistry, right from the moment when Prime Minister Modi landed in Israel last year, from that bear hug to that press conference that took place at the airport, where both leaders were not, they didn't get tired of calling each other friends so many times, and their smiles and their hugs. It was for everyone to see. And we saw a similar thing play out here as well when Prime Minister Modi broke the protocol to receive his Israeli counterpart at the Delhi airport. And again, we saw how, the warmth, it was the body language, and the warmth was evident in their body language. And everyone saw how close the two leaders have become. And one thing is, another thing that could easily go down as one of the turning points in the ties between two countries is when Prime Minister Modi visited Israel last year. Israel named a flower after Prime Minister Modi. So that was another thing that I don't know, and many people said that they haven't heard of in the recent past. So Israel named a flower after Prime Minister Modi. It was a rare gesture. It was special. And then, like you've been mentioning about that stroll along the Mediterranean Sea in that ankle-deep water, and both the leaders having an intense conversation. So if you keep the strategic and diplomatic ties aside, then there is a lot that has been spoken about and written about, the personal chemistry between the two leaders. And Prime Minister Modi has often been credited with shunning formality and
absolutely.
Yeah, he's often been credited for shunning formality and creating a personal equation with world leaders.
Absolutely. And there are these visuals from the Sabarmati ashram where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just arrived. In fact, interesting visuals. The vehicle in which both the leaders were traveling, Prime Minister Modi was seated in the front seat, while the Israeli Prime Minister was in the back seat along with his wife.
So Prime Minister Narendra Modi with Netanyahu, and you can see that he's taking a round of the Sabarmati ashram where Bapu used to live. All three of them, in fact, look at pretty informal. You know, my colleague Archana is also with me on the phone line. Archana, there is one thing which is projecting diplomacy through powerful visuals. There's another thing, projecting personal bond through powerful visuals. But in case of Narendra Modi, I think he seems to be mixing the both through optics like these. What do you have to say?
Yeah, good afternoon, Karthikeyan. Very rightly put by you, because the last time, and we've seen, it's a sense of deja vu. Remember when Shinzo Abe visited Gujarat in September last year, and before that we had Xi Jinping, and everyone saw that swing diplomacy at play. So you're right that optics, and so everybody says that it's symbolism and substance. It's a perfect cocktail of symbolism and substance on display. And for the benefit of our viewers who are watching, the music that's playing in the background is the famous prayer, Vaishnav Janto, which was one of Mahatma Gandhi's, he used to love this prayer, and he sent out a message of love and peace through this bhajan, Vaishnav Janto. So that was just one of the things that I want to inform our viewers about. So yeah, it's rightly put by you that it's optics at display, and he does it so well that it's not just diplomacy at display, but a lot of things, a lot of the message that he tries to send through this is for everyone to see.
But you know, there's also a fact that generally when we spoke about leadership in India, the whole thing was that the projection of Indian leadership, Gandhis and international forums. But I think Archana, Narendra Modi tries to break that barrier also by projecting its domestic leadership on world stage, saying that the other political formation can also give leaders who are acknowledged abroad. They don't just come from one family. So I think it's a political accumulation. It's accumulation of a lot of domestic political agenda, and it also gets articulated in foreign relations. You know, for fact that for Netanyahu and Narendra Modi to be at Sabarmati ashram, and Gandhi, who did a different form of politics. He had his own views on a lot of things, and to have organized such an intimate function there shows that how much water has passed into the bridge. And when we say domestic alignments or domestic politics, but what is unique is that this is something which used to be done in 70s or 60s, children lining up in the street, shows something which was discontinued. Modi has started all of them again. Archana.
Right, and Karthikeyan, it's important for us to tell our viewers that Sabarmati Ashram, it served as an epicenter for country's freedom struggle, and it served as Mahatma Gandhi's home from 1917 to 1930. And as you said, that Prime Minister Modi has come to redefine grandeur. If you talk about his rallies, if you talk about his visits, and whenever he went abroad, he ensured that he had Indian diaspora connect with him, and people started to call him the master of PR, because the way nothing that Prime Minister Modi does, it's impossible for him not to grab headlines, because everything he does is associated with grandeur and something which is going to definitely grab the headlines. And secondly, as you said, that there's this, as everybody says, that he shuns formality at all levels. It's whether it's meeting with Barack Obama, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Macron, whether it's Netanyahu, Prime Minister Modi has managed to create that sort of chemistry with all these leaders, whether it's his body language in form of hugs or handshakes. There's a sense of basically his body language speaks volumes about how he wants to shape his diplomacy internationally.
Not only, I think you rightly pointed out, it's not only about the body language, it's also about the fact that he projects it at very intimate level. And I see it from a different perspective. You see, look at it from the perspective of RSS or BJP. If you look at the evolution of political evolution of leadership in India, most of the relationship with Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi forged were at very personal level. Whether the friendship of Nehru with Sukarno or the friendship of Nehru with Aung San Suu Kyi's father, or his, to say his relationship with the Fabians in Britain, or Nehru's relationship with Tito, Egyptian president, the non-alignment group which he started, all of them became very, very personal. So both personal and political were one. It is only Modi after that, because Indira inherited it, it is only Modi after that has done the same. It's like playing their game and excelling in it. So, you know, that for me makes it very, very unique that a person from a different horizon has done this.
Archana. Right. Karthikeya, I mean, you could tell, I mean, who would know better than you? And as you said that the personal and political have been combined so beautifully, or rather smartly, that it also helps the ties between the two countries grow stronger. So from your experience, you've been covering politics for a long time now. And if you look at the global picture also, do you think that this personal chemistry, this warmth between any two leaders also results in better ties between the two countries, and it helps the people of both countries, or results in better investment or more people-to-people contact? Okay.
Archana, you stay with me. I'm also joined by Caroline Crick, senior columnist from Jerusalem, Mr. Arsen Ostrowski, international human rights lawyer and political analyst from Tel Aviv. Welcome both of you on WION. But first question to you, Caroline. How do you see the projection of both personal and public, diplomatic, but friendship at the same time, through the optics which is visible to 1 billion Indians from Sabarmati Ashram in context of Netanyahu and Narendra Modi?
Look, I think, thank you for having me on your program. I think that the extraordinary display of affection between our two leaders is very inspiring, and that inspiration is going to carry over into the strengthening of ties over the course of the coming months and years and decades, really, between Israel and India. And I think that that really is why this visit is so historic, because when you see and you feel those personal bonds, they emanate out into the feelings of affection that the peoples feel towards one another, and give people the confidence to believe in long-term ties. This is how you turn bilateral ties, close bilateral ties, into a very serious and long-standing bilateral alliance. And I think that that's what we're seeing here, is a transformation of very good bilateral ties between two states into bilateral strategic alliance between two peoples. And it's wonderful, because it's also true that the ties between Israel and India were forged in a very serious way in people-to-people ties that began with the arrival of the first Israeli tourists to India after we opened diplomatic relations with India in 1992. So I think that it started as people-to-people, morphed into a sort of state-to-state alliance, and now we're seeing the full blossoming of both of those aspects of our ties, and I think that it's going to lead to a very robust alliance between our two nations going into the coming years and decades.
Caroline, you please stay with me. Arsen, when we see these visuals, is it correct to say that the Prime Minister wants to project that it's not business as usual with Israel? You know, it's a different political dispensation, different person dealing with Israel and creating a paradigm shift which is untouched and independent of Indian domestic politics.
Look, I agree. I mean, there is nothing in the remote business as usual about this visit. This is a 6-day visit by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It, of course, follows the historic visit by Prime Minister Modi himself to Israel only last year, which was in itself really quite a tremendous step forward in the bilateral relation between our countries. You see the personal connection between the two leaders, which Caroline has mentioned. You see the affection. You see Modi breaking with protocol at the airport to greet Netanyahu. You see him now greeting him in his own state. You see the photography. You see the optics. You see, I know in India they're calling this hug diplomacy. In Israel they're calling this a bromance. So there's nothing there's nothing business as usual about this. In some respects, to Modi, he's strengthening his relations with Israel perhaps at some cost to the bilateral relations with the Palestinians and with some of the Arab states. But I think what does unite these two leaders especially is two things. One, innovation. Netanyahu understands that the future belongs to those who innovate, and as does Prime Minister Modi. And that's why you see a large component of this visit really being focused and centered around innovation, around technology, around synergies between the two countries. So they understand, these two leaders get it. They just get it, the fact that innovation is critical to the future well-being of both nations and peoples. But also I think the two leaders understand the national security component and challenges that we both face. Israel facing here with the Palestinian terrorists, and India with its own national security challenges with Pakistan and with other actors in the region. So for Modi, there is nothing status quo about this, and I think any sort of veil has been well and truly lifted, and I think this is something, on the contrary, that he's quite proud of the blooming relations with Israel.
I think Caroline wanted to react to it. Yes, Caroline, please go ahead.
No, I think that, first of all, I agree with my colleague in Tel Aviv. And second of all, I think that one of the key insights that Modi and Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu share is the understanding, as you said, that the future belongs to those who can innovate, who can harness technologies, who can develop technologies, and who can use them to move their countries forward. And I think that what we're seeing also in Israel's burgeoning relations with a lot of the Sunni Arab states led by Egypt and Saudi Arabia is that they're recognizing that their future is also very much tied to their ability to harness the technological motor that Israel is running to ensure the survival of their countries and their ability to move into the 21st century intact. So I think that you're also seeing that, how is this going to impact India's relations with the Arab world? I don't think that it's going to harm them at all. To the contrary, I think that the Arab world, much of it anyway, shares Prime Minister Modi's basic insight that Israel has become a regionally significant and really globally significant economic power and ally, and that that's why they're also coming to Israel. And as for the Palestinians, they're either going to come to that conclusion or they're not. But I don't think, and Prime Minister Modi made this very clear during his visit to Israel in the summertime, that that cannot stand in the way of India doing what it needs to do in order to ensure its own success, including through a bilateral alliance with Israel into the future. So I think that we're seeing a lot of that kind of recognition right now, not only in India, but throughout the Arab world and Africa and Latin America, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
I think that's an important point, but coming back to Asen, I think apart from innovation, I think it's also happening because there is a problem of Islamic terrorism. India is a victim of terrorism. Though Israel had its own fight with this issue, India has suffered on both the counts. The radicalization which has taken place in Pakistan and sponsoring of terrorists. And secondly, a party in power which is independent of the minority politics and its view of the world, which is something which was part and parcel of the Congress when Khilafat movement was started in response to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. So I think more than the innovation part, it's also ideological. There is some sort of an ideological similarity between the party in power in India and Israel.
Look, I would agree with that assessment. I think that also stems from the ideology and I suppose the sense of pragmatism and worldview of both Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I think they understand that one of the biggest threats facing not just our respective countries, two very proud democracies, I should add as well, but also the region, the Southeast Asia and the Middle East, is the threat of radical Islamic terror. They understand that, they get that. I think Prime Minister Modi understands also there is much that India can learn from Israel in the way that we combat Islamic terror. And you see that also tangibly in the sense that Israel is the number one supplier of defense and arms to India. So they understand there's a lot that they can learn from Israel. But I think there's also a mutual understanding between the two leaders that there is much by way of cooperation and alignment against this joint threat that's necessary for us in terms of protecting both our peoples from this threat. So I think the two leaders get that, and then you're seeing that in there's a defense cooperation across a variety of fields, not just through defense arms. So you're seeing that through cybersecurity, but on an ideological level, I do believe that there is a level of understanding and agreement between the two leaders about the threat we're facing and the need to work together and to cooperate in this regard.
Mm-hmm. But Caroline, as I asked this question to Arsen, in your opinion, has the threat of Islamic terrorism made countries like Israel and India understand the need to partner each other, because both are victims at the same time and both seems to confront the same challenges, geographical, strategic, and in terms of civilizational issues also?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, we share joint threat. I think that we see very strongly. We saw it last month in Pakistan with the PLO ambassador standing on the same stage as the Pakistani arch-terrorist Saeed, who's responsible for the murder of hundreds and hundreds of Indians and Jews, by the way, in the Chabad house, as you mentioned, in Mumbai in 2002. So I think that or 2008, I'm sorry. So I think that we're seeing, yes, that we have two leaders who recognize that we're facing the same threat, the same enemies, and that we have to fight together. And a little quibble, not a big one, with the way that you're discussing it as ideological affinity. I think that the reason why it's so deep, this alliance, and why this visit in particular is really historically significant, is that it's not simply ideology of one party or another. I think that the affinity here is with values, the value of the sanctity of human life and the understanding that we have to join together in order to fight and defeat people who sanctify death. And so I think it goes beyond the level of conservative or liberal ideological politics, and it goes to the very heart of what it means to be a human being, and that this is something that the Israeli people and the Indian people share as citizens of great democracies and historical civilizations. So I think that what we're seeing here really is not just ideological between two conservative leaders, but really an alliance of values very similar to Israel's alliance with the American people, which is about just the affinity of peoples for one another based on our very basic human values. And yes, radical Islam is something that threatens Israel and India in a very existential way, because at the base they reject that very fundamental understanding of the sanctity of human life.
But central to this question, again, this is a question for both of you, but first to Arsen, is the issue of Iran. If you look at the business, India does great business with Iran. It's not that India has taken stand independent of Iran. It has done that in past also. Dr. Manmohan Singh, when he was the Prime Minister, took a decision. But Iran has a different relationship with Israel. Is India and Israel at a stage where they can transcend the issue of Iran and the issues which Israel confronts in context of geopolitical and strategic threat it faces from Iran?
Look, I think the relationship between Israel and India is multifaceted. It's across many fields, and Israel and India can strengthen our respective bilateral relations, but the reality is that India does have relations with a number of Arab states, including Iran. I'm quite certain that during the negotiations, during the discussions, Prime Minister Netanyahu will raise that and perhaps ask in some respect that Prime Minister Modi use his influence on Iran in as far as he can. But the reality is that India will continue to have relations with other Arab nations and with Iran. That may not necessarily be ideal, but that's the reality. In the same way as as Israel has relations with other nations in Southeast Asia region as well. But again, I think through both leaders, they understand that also that there's much that they can gain by way of bilateral relations between our two nations, and we're seeing that in terms of many of the bilateral agreements that have been signed on this trip. So Iran will be an issue, but I don't think it will in any way undermine the growing relations between India and Israel.
Caroline, your views on it?
Look, I think that the issue of Iran is becoming, Iran wants to annihilate Israel. So to the extent that India's bilateral ties with Iran empowered the regime that is seeking Israel's annihilation, that is something that Israel isn't going to be able to be silent about. And here I would just say, I'm not quite sure that India is going to want to be deepening its ties with Iran, particularly because China is now fostering a strategic alliance between Iran and Pakistan, as we see in their latest moves to build up cooperation along the Pakistani-Iranian border area under sort of Chinese sponsorship. And so I think that over time you're going to see this alliance of rogue actors, of jihadi actors in Pakistan and in Iran, sort of overseen by mercantilist Chinese foreign policy. And I think that that's going to, again, be something that is a driver to strengthen even more India's relations with Israel and with the Sunni Arab states that are fighting Iranian rise to hegemonic power and nuclear power in the region. So I think that you're going to see a lot of that as well. I mean, just as the internal dynamics are sort of fostering on so many different levels an alliance between the Indian people and the Israeli people, so too the dynamics of the jihadi axis are driving the situation so that it's going to be more and more difficult for democracies like India to continue to maintain close ties to regimes like the Iranian one that fosters and sponsors and carries out jihad against other countries.
Caroline, before I let both of you go, I'll start with you, Caroline, and the next time I'll come to you, Arsen. Can we safely say that the India-Israel relationship has become free of the West Asian politics and its dominant narrative, which was there for past 40 to 45 years?
You mean the Palestinian issue?
Absolutely.
Look, I think that what we're seeing now is that for 45 years you've had geopolitics sort of being hostage to something that doesn't have a lot of strategic relevance. That there was this concept that Middle East peace was driven by whether or not Israel cedes land to Palestinians or not, and this was never a rational analysis of the state of affairs in the Middle East. This was never a driving force of Arab politics at all, but it was made to seem as such so that people wouldn't look into Arab societies and try to understand what made them tick. And now I think that the sort of the house of cards that was the basis of this analysis has really fallen. We saw it with President Trump's latest national security strategy that he published last month that says that it's incorrect to view the Palestinian issue as the root of Middle Eastern political realities.
Okay, and Arsen, your closing comments, 1 minute.
Look, I think, this visit has been not only about the optics and the symbolism, which has been in itself incredibly powerful, from the embrace between Modi and Netanyahu to Taj Mahal to visit now in Modi's personal state. But what we're seeing, there's also many tangible win-win situations coming out of this. We're seeing at least, I think, almost 10 bilateral agreements signed. We're seeing bilateral trade, which is currently at $4.5 billion. But I think that's the tip of the iceberg. And I think this visit can really be summarized in 3 words: innovation, innovation, innovation. And I think the future really is bright for the two nations. And I think this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Arsen, for joining us from Israel on this continuous coverage which WION is doing on Netanyahu's visit to India. He's being accompanied by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi today in Gujarat, and tomorrow he'll be in Mumbai. Our coverage on this visit will continue every hour.